Phase 2 Class Elite, Wang Ling.
Let me ask you this: in terms of, in terms of some of the stuff that you've done, has there been anything that resonated with you the most, like that you really dug, that character or that storyline, whatever the process was that you really kind of got into and were a little bit more invested in, I guess maybe?
Yeah. I mean, every time I get to go in there is just like a special little moment, right? Because when you break it down, I don't know. When a director casts you in a show, they're really just putting their trust in you to be able to do the work, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just kind of like an honor in that, from that aspect. But some characters mean a lot to me just from, I don't know, kind of silly standpoints, I guess. So like, I play a character named Wang Ling in The Daily Life of the Immortal King.
Yeah.
And he's the protagonist. He's the main character of the entire show. But of all the characters in the show, he talks the least.
Right. Yeah.
He's basically God in this universe, and he's just so he's kind of just a melancholy, like nonchalant kind of, I guess.
Yeah.
Most of my lines are just like and it's like, how many variations of that can you do and still make it unique, kind of thing. And every time it's just kind of like a special little treat of just like, how can I make this guy sound more annoyed and bored, I guess. That's been my first lead that I've had, and they're going on their fifth season now. And that's kind of crazy to think about. I mean, just from that aspect of like, I mean, I don't think I would have ever thought of having a character go across like 2 seasons or whatever, let alone 5, and also the main character, So like, I also think it's kind of really funny in that aspect of like, yeah, I'm the lead of the show, and he barely talks. Like, that's just like really cool to me. The other guy that was like really special to me was a character in One Piece who his name is Senior Pink.
That's supposed to hurt me.
And he's kind of this big burly pirate man who wears a diaper and a baby bonnet. Yeah, and sunglasses. And his whole persona is about being hard-boiled, which is basically just a manly man. And going into that, I was approached by the director, Mike McFarlane, and he had asked me, hey, I want to have you read for this character. We're looking for kind of like this, resonant kind of guy with he's got a Hispanic accent, so he was like, a little bit of George Clooney, like that smoothness in his voice, and a little bit of like Antonio Banderas kind of sound. And then he was like, actually, have you ever watched King of the Hill? And I was like, I love King of the Hill. Yeah, of course. He's like, there's this guy on TV in King of the Hill. He's like a priest who fights people. And his catchphrase is, and before he could say it, I was like, "Vaya con Dios." And he was like, that's what we're going for, Even
in a wedding dress, Monsignor Martinez looks hot.
That is one sexy priest.
So Senior Pink, he's just big burly man, kind of hello pirate, kind of thing like that. And his whole thing is about just being a manly man, and his backstory is absolutely tragic.
That cold, dark rain kept pouring, just like in my heart.
I found out about his backstory like halfway through recording his character, and I was like, if I had known, like, I wouldn't have been able to do this. I'd be crying the whole time. This poor man.
Seems like the rain you enjoyed so much finally let up.
Yeah, Senior Pink is really cool just because of the character that he is. And it's kind of funny. I went to Anime Expo this year in July, And I found a guy who was cosplaying as Senior Pink, and I was like, I need a picture with you.
Nice.
And I told them I was the dub actor, and they were really excited about it. We got a picture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that character a lot too. So
when you were talking about that, about the tragedy of it, though, that's what I think is that so many people probably that don't watch anime don't understand is the depth of it. Because they might just catch, one thing and think, oh, it's super goofy or whatever. And they don't realize that there's any kind of genre you can think of for a TV show, you can think of for anime. It's not a one-stop shop. There's so many different kinds. And even within those, most of the time, there's depth like that, where you've got this super goofy looking character, and it's, probably in very outlandish situations and all this, but there's this deep tragic backstory to it. And there's so much of the anime storytelling is like that. There are this deep, emotionally resonating kind of themes going on underneath the wow exterior, right? Which I think is just, it kind of takes me back to the persona thing, because when you start talking about personas, like in school, I studied ancient world literature and ancient world history. So I studied a lot of like Greek mythology and that kind of stuff. And, the word persona comes from the Greek word, which I will not probably be able to pronounce correctly, but prosopon, which means face or appearance or mask. And in classical Greek theater, the prosopon referred to the mask worn by actors to represent a character or social role, right? Because they literally wore masks to show what that character was back then, right? It was a part of it. And I love that idea, because I'm always thinking about just, even in normal everyday life, we as humans are constantly kind of creating personas. There's a philosopher that I watch a lot. His name is Jason Silva. I don't know if you ever heard of him or not. Venezuelan guy, and he's super smart. But he was talking one time about this quote.
And so the philosopher by the last name of Cooley, he was a sociologist, and he wrote about the looking glass self theory. And basically what he said is that we come to be through the interactions that we have with other people by making models of the other person's mind. In other words, he says, I am not who I think I am. I am not who you think I am. I am who I think you think I am. In other words, we make renderings of what other people think of us and actually play the role of becoming who we think they think we are. But in the end, we never actually get to know other people's minds. All we get to know is our modeling of their modeling of us. So at the end of the day, we live inside of a construct of our own making.
And it's that whole kind of like, does art imitate life or life imitate art kind of thing? There's a feedback loop constantly going on just in our daily lives about, what setting I'm in, who am I around. And a lot of times you're going to embody the persona of what that person even thinks that you are for that situation. You try to remain faithful to who you are, but we're always kind of morphing into these various personas like that. You know what I mean? It's kind of it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I think that goes outside of just the perception of people as well. I think sometimes it's a matter of perspective and a matter of power of that perspective. You know, even things that are just internal, things with yourself. It's where you choose to place your energy, where you choose to place your attention or your affection and stuff, like, can also dictate the way that you react to those things. And sometimes it's like, if you just shift the perspective, or if you just shift where you're putting that attention or energy, the ripple effect, it follows suit, right?
Always remember, Your focus determines your reality.
And same thing with people. Sometimes in the acting world, a lot of people talk about imposter syndrome, you know,
right.
And the way that people perceive you and stuff like that. It's like sometimes truthfully, you know, like truthfully, people probably aren't even thinking about you most of the time, right? But you do one thing or you have one interaction and you're like, they think I'm the biggest, you know, fool of them all or whatever. And it's like, doesn't mean anything most of the time.
Right.
But yeah, it is. I'd be curious to like hear that full thing. I'll have to look them up to check that out.
You mentioned intention. Yeah. I mean, I think that's why that's so important, right? So that you are behaving with some type of intended outcome instead of unconsciously or subconsciously rather being guided by what you were saying, by those people you're in or those interactions or whatever. It's so important to have kind of laid out, whether it's in general positive affirmations or very specific, like this is what I want to do, this is what I want to obtain, this is, you know, what I want to achieve or whatever.
Yeah.
Because if you're not operating with that intention, then where are you going to end up? And so, which crosses into this whole conversation with acting, with music, with all these things. Like it is good to be able to ad lib and play off of people, but you also have to kind of have your unique slant on things to become whatever you're trying to become, right? If you're trying to do traditional acting, voice acting, music, whatever, you know, as a designer, talent acquisition, whatever you're doing, like you have to have that kind of intention, because otherwise the persona might be created without, I mean, you see it all the time now in today's society. There are a lot of people, especially right now, that I feel like are just guided into ways of thinking and being without realizing that they're doing it.